Hello boys and girls, today we're going to talk about a relief print using radial symmetry. First of all, we have to make sure we're being safe, so I have some safety rules we're going to talk about as we print. Second, if you do cut yourself, please put the knife down on the table, put your pressure on the wound and have someone come get me. We are going to be doing our relief print, which means that we're taking something, a block. In this case, it's going to be soft cut, and we're carving away parts of that block, and then we're going to print it with ink. If you layer those colors, you can get lots of different effects. These are just some examples of some prints using the soft cut material. First thing we're going to do is get a very small block. It's sort of like an eraser, and you're going to take a Sharpie and put a dot in one corner on both sides, the same corner. That's going to be the center of your print. And write your name and class code on the back with a Sharpie. And then what we're going to do is we're going to draw a design that comes out from the dot. So think about what shapes you like to draw, what shapes you like to use in your artwork, and just start to build a design going out from that dot. And we're using the fine point Sharpies, which are like the thicker ones, because when we carve our block, that's about as thick as our line would be if we carve it. So I don't want you to use the really skinny Sharpies because that would be too small. I think you would probably end up having some trouble getting all your design in there. So you want to make sure you leave a little white space in between your Sharpie lines so you have enough room for your design to show. Then what we're going to do is look at our tools. So we're using a linoleum knife, and there's two different blades. One is a 5 and one is a 2. The 5 is sort of a U-shaped blade that has a scoop, and then the 2 is a V-shaped blade. So the 5 carves a wider line and the 2 carves a skinnier line. When you look at your knife, there's several pieces of the knife, and there's a chuck. That's the chuck right there, and the chuck has several pieces, so you kind of, I will always do this for you, but you set those pieces together and then you screw that onto the base, and then the knife blade has a rounded end that you slide into the chuck, and then you tighten it. You don't really need to know about that. What I do want you to know is if your blade is loose, I'd like you to bring it to me right away so I can fix it. So if your blade feels wobbly, let me know. The end of the handle does come off, just ignore that. I just want you to know that's all normal. So when you cut, you're going to take your knife and make a high five and put the end of the knife into your, the end of the handle into your palm of your hand, and then pinch your fingers around it. And then you're always going to cut away from your body. So you're holding your knife at a flat, kind of a flat angle, and you're going to move your block. So as you carve, it'll take away these little pieces of soft cut, which is that eraser-like material. And you just want to get rid of those, so put them off to the side. So I'm carving away all my black lines, and I'm always carving away from my body, and I'm always holding my block with my other hand behind the blade. So I never want to put my fingers in front of the blade, because then if I lose control, I will cut myself. And I promise you will cut yourself. So we really don't want that to happen. So as I carve, I'm taking my time and I'm just working my way through so every black line is carved. Now I'm using a number 2 blade, which is the V-shaped blade, and that's going to give you thinner lines. Now if you want to carve away bigger areas, then you would use the number 5 blade. So if you're like cleaning out a shape, for example, you would use that bigger blade. I usually outline it first with the number 2, and then I would clean it out with the number 5. So I'm just working my way around my block. You'll notice that as I carve, I turn the block, not my blade. My blade's pretty much always, I'm trying to make sure that it's always pointing forward, away from my body, and then my hand is sort of guiding it so that my block's moving and my blade is not. My knife's not really moving a whole lot. I find that to be a little bit safer than trying to move my knife in all different directions. So I'm almost done carving my block, and this is a pretty small block, but we're going to repeat this design 4 times when we print it. So it's okay if it's a little small. Now I decided to hollow away or cut away some of my black so it looks white when I print it. So I'm just taking that bigger blade, the number 5 that's shaped like a U, and I'm removing that area. Same way, but it just makes a thicker line. So you'll notice that when I carve that the pieces that come off are a lot wider. And so that's what it's good for. Some kids really like to have wide lines, and some kids like to have skinny lines. Up to you. I like to have both. Now you can kind of see how the blade has gone in and made an indentation. You should be able to put your fingernail into each of those little spots. Now, once your black is carved, we're going to print it. So the first thing we're going to do is put some ink onto a little tray, and this is a black printing ink. So our black is our soft cut, that eraser-like material. And then I have a piece of paper that is bigger than my black. It's actually 4 times bigger plus a little extra. And I'm going to fold it, and when I fold it, I'm just going to fold it and push down just the middle part, because I want to find the center of my paper. So I can kind of see that I can see the center. I didn't really fold it all the way. I just folded it enough to find the center point, and I put a little pencil mark there. Because when I print it, I want to line up the dot that's on the back of my black with that dot. So I actually want to line it up. And then I'm going to write my name and class code on the back of my paper. And now this is when we have to get our ink rolled out. So this is called a brayer, and a brayer has a spinning rubbery part and a handle. We always want to roll our brayer forward, lift it up, and start back at the beginning. So you go forward, 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 or backward, backward, backward. When you roll it back and forth without lifting it up, it doesn't get very even, so that way we get a more even layer of ink. So I'm just spreading my ink out onto my tray, and I'm leaving a little puddle of ink on one end so that I can come back to it, because we just want the right amount of ink. We don't want too much or too little. So I'm rolling it forward, lifting it up, forward, lifting it up, and I want a nice even layer of ink. Now, since I'm using black paper, I'm actually using a little white with my yellow just so it shows up better. And then what we're going to do is roll that onto our black. So same way you rolled up your brayer before, you're just going to roll that ink over your black. Now, if you don't use enough ink, it will look kind of light and spotty. If you use too much ink, it will not show your lines very well, or it could look globby, or it could move easier on you. Once I roll it up, I'm going to very carefully, holding it by the edges, turn it over and line it up with my paper so the dots line up with each other. So I put it on there so that dot is in the middle. And then I'm going to very carefully turn it over and press down on it. Now you don't want to move your paper. You don't want to rub your paper back and forth, because it will make your print move. And if it moves, it's going to look messy. So once you press down, straight down with your hand, you're going to peel it off, and it makes a copy of your design. See how I made a copy? Now we're going to do that 3 more times. Same way. We're going to roll it up. Very carefully, holding it by the edges, line it up so the dot is in the middle. Then we're going to turn it over very carefully and press straight down with your palm. Just press straight down. And these blacks are so small that it's really going to be pretty easy for you to press it down. One thing we didn't really talk about is what is a radial design. So we're using radial symmetry, which means that it's symmetrical. If you cut it in half, it would be the same on both sides, but it also is coming from the center. So radial symmetry is when your design comes from the center and radiates out. So instead of just being the same on 2 sides, it's the same over and over. So it could be 4 sides or 6 sides. In our case, this is going to be 4 sides. So when you think about radial symmetry, think about a bicycle wheel, think about a hubcap, think about all the shapes in our world that are round or come out from the center and radiate out, like a daisy. There's lots of examples of things that come out from the center like that. So once we have all 4 sides printed, then you can see how my black has created a radial design. It's basically the same on all 4 sides, mostly, and it turned out pretty well. Thanks, boys and girls.